Just moments ago, Prince Harry stunned the world with a confidential court submission that bypassed palace protocol entirely. This wasn't just legal, it was personal. Insiders claim the documents contain truths so volatile, the royal family convened an emergency call within minutes. What's inside, and why now? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. In the hours after the filing, the mood around Britain shifted from curiosity to shock. News outlets scrambled, analysts speculated, and yet, the court itself released almost nothing. Pages were redacted, lines were sealed, and reporters were left circling the courthouse like restless birds. But the silence only added weight. Everyone sensed something unprecedented had just been set in motion, and Harry, calm, calculated, relentless, seemed determined to place the truth on the legal record, regardless of the consequences. This wasn't a press interview. This wasn't a memoir. This was something far more permanent. Behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace was caught completely off guard. No warning, no advance communication, no courtesy call. For an institution built on control, protocol, and perfect timing, the suddenness of the move felt like a strike precisely aimed and impossible to ignore. Advisors rushed into meetings, phones rang, statements were drafted, edited, and quietly held back. Because to respond too quickly would be to reveal panic, and to stay silent would look like fear. Somewhere between both, tension began to rise like pressure in a sealed room. Meanwhile, those who witnessed the filing firsthand described an atmosphere thick with unease. A court clerk reportedly paused while handling the material, reading enough to understand its volatility before passing it forward with visible caution. Harry's spokesperson offered only one firm declaration: the truth must now be on record. With those words, the narrative shifted. This wasn't rebellion for attention. This was confrontation with intent, delivered through the one arena where spin loses power, the courtroom. And yet, not everything went according to plan. Harry's legal team requested that large portions of the documents remain sealed. The judge agreed partially. What wasn't locked away now exists in a legal limbo, shielded in name but whispered about everywhere else. That alone suggests what lies inside is not merely personal grievance, but institutional vulnerability. The palace knows it, the press senses it. And Harry, perhaps more than anyone, understands that once something reaches the court record, it never truly disappears. So the question now is no longer whether this will cause damage. It's how deep that damage will run, and who will be forced to face it when the curtain finally lifts. But what exactly is Harry trying to expose? And who stands to lose everything once these documents come to light? Sources close to the proceedings hint that Harry's filing contains evidence of internal communications, long believed to have been destroyed letters, transcripts, and memos that could unravel years of carefully maintained royal narratives. Whispers from inside the legal chamber have described an annex within the document that directly references classified Royal Archives materials not seen or even acknowledged publicly in years. These references point to a turbulent window between 2019 and 2022, a span that encompasses Harry and Meghan's decision to step back, their public interview revelations, and the internal scrambling that followed within palace walls. It is during this window, sources claim, that a flurry of communications occurred behind closed doors, communications now central to Harry's explosive legal maneuver. What's even more unsettling is the suggestion that private briefings, once meant only for the Queen's Counsel, have been brought to light. These briefings, typically guarded under extreme confidentiality, may now be exposed in an unprecedented legal move. The integrity of royal legal privilege itself may be under threat. And at the heart of these documents, memos that allegedly detail coordinated internal strategies aimed at limiting Harry and Meghan's access to both media and institutional defense strategies, drafted not by strangers, but by figures deeply embedded within the highest royal offices. There are murmurs of audio files, unconfirmed, unverified, but repeatedly referenced by those familiar with the submission. These recordings, if real, are said to capture moments of unguarded clarity, tone, context, and perhaps even intent. In a system where public language is always sanitized and rehearsed, the existence of candid, off-the-record dialogue could be seismic. The palace, built on layers of discretion, would have no recourse if such material reaches daylight. Legal experts suggest the documents accuse certain members of deliberately obstructing clear channels of communication. Requests ignored, warnings dismissed, mediation offers shut down. It wasn't just mismanagement, it may have been intentional. Media relationships allegedly manipulated from within, pushing carefully crafted narratives while silencing others. Controlled headlines, planned leaks, and subtle yet effective character assassinations, all pointing to a well-oiled apparatus functioning behind the scenes. And then comes the most damning revelation of all names. The filing reportedly identifies a select group of senior aides who once served directly under Camilla and Charles. While their specific roles remain sealed, the implication is enough. These were individuals with access, influence, and instruction. If their actions were authorized, it could suggest a chain of company. Demand that reaches uncomfortably high. If not, it raises an entirely different concern. Were the senior royals out of touch with the power being exercised in their name? The monarchy now finds itself in a precarious balancing act. On one side, the risk of legal exposure that could permanently damage its internal sanctity. On the other, the danger of appearing indifferent or complicit. The very foundation of discretion that once protected them may now become the lever of their unraveling. And while the palace scrambles behind closed doors, one figure remains eerily silent until now. Though Meghan Markle is absent from the filing, her influence pulses through every page. Insiders say Harry's actions stem from a private family revelation that left him morally cornered and legally empowered. In the shadows of the courtroom drama lies a presence that speaks louder in absence Meghan. Her name may be missing from the formal declaration, but every choice Harry makes echoes the emotional weight of her past. Sources close to the Sussex inner circle say her advisors were quietly consulted in the weeks leading up to the submission. No press statements, no leaks, just quiet legal strategy, shaped not by retaliation but by resilience. It was a decision built on scars, not scandal. And those scars, some claim, run deeper than anyone outside the palace gates truly understands. Privately, Harry has been described as tormented but resolute. The filing wasn't a stunt or a moment of frustration, it was the culmination of months of internal debate, of conversations behind closed doors that left him pacing at night, wrestling with loyalty and truth. The toll is visible in his recent silence, the deliberate avoidance of press while the storm brews. Friends say it was a single moment, a message, a memory, or perhaps an admission that finally tipped him from hesitation to legal action. Moment remains hidden, but its impact is undeniable. Meghan's silence, meanwhile, has only amplified speculation. In a world where every word is dissected, her decision to remain quiet has raised more questions than answers. Is she preparing her own legal step? Will she appear later in the proceedings with evidence of her own? Or is her silence the most powerful condemnation of all? The unanswered questions have made her absence feel strategic and potentially explosive. In a palace used to controlling the narrative, this level of unpredictability is deeply unsettling. At the heart of Harry's filing lies a series of past grievances that were never addressed, titles that were withheld without clarity, treatment by staff that was never accounted for, and the lingering issue of personal and familial protection. These are not minor wounds. They are the foundation of the Sussex's departure, the beginning of the unraveling. And now they have returned not in a televised interview, but in a courtroom document stamped with the force of law. Evidence of private exchanges, some digital, some handwritten, are rumored to be embedded in the filing. One exchange, reportedly between senior palace aides and a legal liaison, is said to expose a startling lack of due process in key decisions. Another message, more personal, allegedly captures a moment of desperation between Harry and a trusted confidant, one that speaks to betrayal from within. These are not speculative claims. They are documented, time-stamped and submitted. Even Hollywood hasn't been immune. The Netflix team that had long been working on the Sussex's next chapter reportedly hit pause after learning of the filing's contents. The tone of the entire project may have shifted overnight from retrospective to real-time crisis. There's a sense that something irreversible has begun, and those closest to the couple are now liberating for what comes next. But the courtroom isn't the only arena Harry is preparing to confront his next target, maybe someone far closer to the throne. For the first time, Prince William is formally named in Harry's legal maneuvering not as a brother, but as a senior royal actor, allegedly complicit in systemic exclusion. The phrase, willful silencing, appears more than once. It is a revelation that threatens to permanently fracture what remains of the brothers' bond. The legal documents, bold in tone and sharp in detail, allege a coordinated discouragement campaign that unfolded behind the palace walls, as the Sussexes were preparing to exit. But this wasn't just passive disapproval. According to court-sourced language, it was an active effort engineered by those within William's advisory circle, if not directly by William himself, to isolate, diminish, and ultimately suppress Harry's autonomy inside the royal structure. What was once spoken of in whispers now lies on official record, edged with accountability and brimming with consequence. A series of internal emails sourced from a legal discovery process that began long before the filing was made public reportedly paint a devastating picture. Messages from senior aides referencing deliberate delays, discouraging institutional support, and even strategizing press narratives. These exchanges date back to the height of the Sussex transition, a time when public statements focused on unity while private conversations, it now seems, may have been far less forgiving. The sense of betrayal these messages evoke is unmistakable. It's not just about policy, it's personal. Palace insiders say the moment Prince William learned of his inclusion in the filing, the fury behind palace doors was immediate. Blindsided, that was the word used repeatedly by staff, by courtiers, and even by those close to the king. This wasn't a leer. It was a legal ambush. Kensington Palace, which has traditionally operated with strategic caution, now finds itself in reactive chaos. Clarence House, meanwhile, remains conspicuously tight-lipped, though sources suggest Charles is deeply concerned about the widening rift and the public perception of inaction. Legal experts are calling Harry's decision to name William a strategic risk, one that could either collapse the credibility of his campaign or catapult it into an entirely new realm of institutional reckoning. On one hand, it puts undeniable weight behind Harry's allegations. On the other, it draws a direct line to the heir apparent, inviting scrutiny that no royal heir has faced in such legal terms in recent memory. The court itself has responded with measured caution, acknowledging a sealed annex within the filing, its contents accessible only to the senior judiciary. What lies within remains unknown, but its existence alone has become a gravitational force in this unfolding drama. This is no longer a family dispute confined to emotional damage or reputational wounds. This is now legal terrain, where records can't be scrubbed and intent cannot be denied. And as the weight of this filing settles, a darker implication begins to emerge, one that shifts attention away from the emotional collapse of two brothers and onto something far more haunting, the question of leadership itself, and who knew what when. And while the royal brothers may be torn apart again, the documents reveal something even more chilling, an accusation that points upward. The most explosive revelation yet. King Charles III is reportedly mentioned in connection with an alleged incident Harry described as the final betrayal. The documents hint at prior knowledge and deliberate inaction. For months, speculation had swirled about the extent of the king's involvement. But within the court filing lies a damning subsection titled Chronology of Silence, meticulously dated from Charles's regency era, a time when public sympathy ran high and private fractures deepened behind palace doors. It's not a sweeping accusation, but a surgical one. Line by line, it maps out a pattern of choices, not ones made in ignorance, but decisions forged with full awareness. And if what's inside holds up, it may not simply be a matter of misjudgment, it could become the legacy-defining stain of his reign. At the heart of the section is a private handwritten letter, allegedly composed by Charles and delivered directly to Harry in the days following a particularly brutal media storm targeting Meghan. The letter is described as both apologetic and distancing. There is empathy in its tone, but a haunting absence of accountability. According to those familiar with its contents, the letter stops short of offering action, instead emphasizing tradition, timing, and royal constraint. But Harry, already on the brink of disillusionment, reportedly saw it for what it was: a shield. A father choosing preservation over protection. Now, that same letter is in the hands of the court, its words potentially subject to public scrutiny, should the filing proceed to an open hearing. Alongside it, a critical reference to a post-birth security decision made after Archie's arrival. It is this moment, according to sources, that Harry deems unforgivable. A choice made not by advisors, but with Charles's express consent, which significantly altered the level of safety afforded to Harry's new family. The move, while legal, felt to Harry like a quiet revocation of belonging. The Monarch's ink may not have signed it directly, but his silence signed off on its consequence. Within the palace, the reaction to Charles's naming has been one of defensive containment. Advisors have reportedly worked around the clock to shield the king from exposure, both literal and emotional. Aides were dispatched to review archives. Personal correspondences were quietly removed from circulation, and access to certain former staff has been tightened. There is an air of panic now, not just at what has been filed, but at what may yet come. Royal historians have been quick to weigh in. One described the situation as deeply corrosive to the sovereign's moral position, warning that no matter the outcome, a perception of abandonment, especially between father and son, can permanently reshape public sentiment. It isn't just about duty anymore, it's about humanity, or the absence of it when it was most needed. And then, buried deep in the text, is Harry's own voice, raw and restrained in equal measure. One quote has already surfaced, powerful in its simplicity: "I waited. He didn't come." That sentence has echoed across legal chambers and media outlets alike. It encapsulates the emotional fracture better than any headline. The crown may remain intact, but the bond beneath it has shattered in silence. Yet as the monarchy reels from these bombshells, the legal filing hints at something even more powerful: an international dimension. Buried in the latter pages of the court documents is a mysterious section marked Foreign Relations Confidential. Allegedly referencing intelligence sharing and diplomatic pressure, this twist reveals a shadow war that may have shaped Harry's exit years ago. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard civil submission, focused on royal grievances and institutional neglect. But then came the section no one expected: coded language, redacted footnotes, and a chilling title that immediately shifted the tone of the entire document. Foreign Relations Confidential. Sources with knowledge of the contents suggest that this section outlines a complex web of interactions between the Canadian and British governments' communications that raise questions not only of influence, but of interference. This was no longer a family feud played out in front of paparazzi. This was something darker, deeper entangled with statecraft. According to legal aides involved in the case, the documents include references to a now classified dossier shared between diplomatic offices in Ottawa and Washington, one that allegedly involved press management across borders. Key headlines, timed narratives, and specific media partners may have been coordinated to shape public perception of the Sussexes as they step down. While none of the governments have officially commented, the implications are staggering. If substantiated, it would suggest that Harry and Meghan's image was not just managed by the palace, it was managed internationally. Even more shocking is the veiled mention of two of Britain's most secretive institutions, MI5 and GCHQ. While not named directly, coded identifiers used within internal government communication appear throughout the section. Legal analysts have described the inclusion of such references in a civil court filing as unprecedented. These are agencies tasked with national security, not domestic drama. And yet here they are, listed in proximity to conversations about data monitoring, press activity, and personal privacy violations. The message is clear: Harry believes what happened to him went far beyond the palace gates. The filing subtly raises the question of royal immunity in international contexts. While the monarch enjoys protection under UK law, what happens when allegations extend across borders? Could such legal armor hold under American scrutiny? Could Canada invoke legal precedent in light of possible state-sponsored press collaboration? No one knows. but the ambiguity has triggered alarm in parliamentary circles, and whisper have already begun about a closed-door security review. Adding to the intrigue, Harry's California-based legal team reportedly received a classified courtesy briefing just days before the filing. Though its contents remain sealed, the timing is no coincidence. Someone, somewhere, decided Harry needed to know something dangerous enough to require discretion, yet urgent enough to prompt action. That briefing may have been the final spark before ignition. As pressure builds across diplomatic and intelligence networks, a new wave of anxiety sweeps through London. This isn't just a royal scandal anymore, it's a question of national interest. One misstep, one leak, one confirmed document, and the fallout could extend far beyond family loyalty or constitutional tradition. But while the geopolitical storm brews, another royal figure emerges unexpectedly with her own knowledge, her own past, and a decision that changes everything. In a shocking revelation, Harry's court submission draws from sealed documents, once safeguarded by Princess Diana herself. Personal notes, diary entries, and taped recordings, allegedly entrusted to a legal confidant before her death, now take center stage. What began as a legal declaration rooted in recent pain has now reached deep into history, unearthing a mother's desperate foresight. Within the body of Harry's filing is a section that no one saw coming: a sealed envelope, once guarded by a London barrister known only to a handful of Diana's closest allies. This man, now retired, re-emerged under subpoena, holding pieces of a puzzle that had remained hidden for nearly 3 decades. He had been entrusted with the unthinkable, letters Diana penned not to the public but to her sons. Words meant for a time she feared she wouldn't live to see. That time, it seems, has arrived. The most haunting element is a confidential audio recording. On it, Diana's unmistakable voice trembles through the years, filled with love, fear, and brutal clarity. In one clip, she reportedly warns of institutional pressures that see fracture her sons. She speaks of influence of people around the crown who would stop at nothing to silence dissent in order to protect the system. It wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. And in naming them her sons who might one day be made strangers, Diana seemed to understand, long before anyone else, that Harry could one day be pushed beyond the gates. Her notes, now transcribed and sealed into evidence, are being referred to as the mother's firewall, a shield she tried to build in ink, and courage for the sons she feared would be left unguarded. One passage in particular has sent tremors through the court. Diana allegedly warned that when love is seen as rebellion, protection must be written into law. Legal experts say this may have been a cryptic reference to ensuring her sons had future legal standing to defend their names and choices if the monarchy turned inward on them. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was reportedly left shaken by the mention of Diana's wishes in this context. Sources close to Kensington Palace say she had no idea such documents even existed, and that the reference to Diana's concern about both sons being reshaped by institution hit her hard. While her own position remains deeply loyal to the firm, even Catherine, it said, understands the emotional bombshell these revelations deliver. This isn't about reputation, it's about legacy, love, and survival. Harry, in a private memo attached to the filing, reportedly wrote, "She tried to protect us from this. Those words carry more than grief, they carry resolve." This isn't about proving pain anymore. It's about honoring the voice that was lost and using her final warnings as a call to arms. Diana's instructions weren't vague sentiments. They were structured, specific, designed for a future where her children would need protection from the very crown that once claimed to shelter them. And Diana's voice echoing across time, Harry's next move becomes inevitable. He's no longer just reacting. He's launching a full-scale offensive. As the royal household braces for reputational aftershocks, Prince Harry prepares for a confrontation not just with the firm, but with history itself. Next court date is set. Security has been doubled, and one judge has reportedly requested 24-hour legal review access. In chambers where silence once reigned, the tempo has shifted to controlled chaos. Barristers are being flown in with reputations as courtroom tacticians, not just defenders of reputation. The monarchy has assembled a legal defense unlike any it has mounted before. Insiders whisper that this is not about clearing names, it's about containing damage. The stakes have evolved. This is no longer simply about protecting titles or tradition. It's about preserving the institution's survival in the face of a challenge rooted in something even more dangerous than scandal: truth with documentation. Behind the scenes, subpoenas have started to land. Anonymous royal staffers, once invisible, now essential, are being granted temporary protection in exchange for testimony. Some are reportedly former aides to Camilla and Charles. Others are said to have served in Meghan and Harry's brief inner circle. What binds them all is proximity. Proximity to decisions, proximity to secrets, and proximity to silence. The court has made it clear anonymity will be preserved, but truth must come forward. And as names are quietly confirmed behind closed doors, one reality becomes undeniable: this trial will not be clean. It will not be quiet. And it will not be short. Meanwhile, the court is under growing pressure to determine whether the hearing should be conducted privately or exposed to the public in full. Advocates for transparency argue that the accusations involve a taxpayer-funded institution and should not be shielded from the people. Royal loyalists argue the potential consequences of unsealing everything could destabilize confidence in the crown itself. That debate rages, even as preparations are made for both possibilities. Courthouse staff have been briefed for increased media presence, but also issued new protocols in case of restricted access. The uncertainty alone has intensified the drama. Beyond the gates, the streets outside the courthouse have turned into a symbolic battleground. Protesters and supporters clash daily. Some demand accountability, others plead for tradition. Placards carry messages that range from poetic to ruthless. And among the chaos, there's a deeper current, a collective realization that this isn't just a family matter. It's a reckoning between past and future, privilege and justice, secrecy and exposure. The monarchy, once elevated above such storms, now finds itself at the eye of one. Then came the leak. A single email, its sender still unconfirmed, hinted at further filings from Harry's team. The message, now circulating through press circles like wildfire, claims the original submission was merely phase 1, that more revelations are scheduled to be released in intervals, each layer more destabilizing than the last. Whether it's legal strategy or calculated escalation, the effect is undeniable. The monarchy is being drawn into a slow, deliberate siege built not on hearsay, but on records, on names, on actions long buried. And just as the world believes it's seen the worst of it, one final document is quietly filed behind the scenes. In a final twist, insiders confirm Harry's filing contains a confidential clause that could transform royal succession dynamics, royal funding, or even trigger a parliamentary review. This isn't just about revenge, it may be about dismantling a system from within. It's the clause, no one W, as supposed to see, buried at the end of a dense legal document, marked for restricted judicial eyes only. And yet, within hours of its discovery, whispers had already reached the corridors of Whitehall and the lobbies of Parliament, titled Future Transparency Mandate. This provision is more than a demand. It's a challenge, a direct strike at the veiled machinery of monarchy. Its content proposes a radical shift, the establishment of an independent watchdog to oversee royal communication with the media, monitor narrative manipulation, and audit the flow of institutional silence. For centuries, the firm has operated in darkness. Now Harry is attempting to drag it into the light, but the clause does not stop there. It carries a veiled threat to challenge the limits of sovereign immunity. Legal immunity has long protected the inner sanctum of the crown from courtroom scrutiny. But this filing dares to explore the boundaries of that shield, suggesting that in matters involving press manipulation, taxpayer funding, and reputational warfare, no royal should be above investigation. If accepted by the court, this could shatter precedent and redefine the legal boundaries between monarchy and citizen. Perhaps the most jarring implication lies in its potential impact on royal finances. The clause reportedly demands a review of how public funds are allocated, how security decisions are made, and how resources tied to rank are distributed. One line, heavily redacted but partially leaked, suggests that titles linked to income could face periodic justification. For an institution where power and privilege are rarely questioned, this would be a devastating disruption to the status quo. Theories now swirl that this clause was crafted with more than legal reform in mind. Some suggest Harry inserted it as a final reckoning, a symbolic trigger to be pulled only if the institution continues its refusal to evolve. Others, however, whisper something far more audacious, that this clause could be tied to an eventual abdication scenario involving King Charles himself. That Harry, knowing the true weight of the monarchy's internal fractures, may be positioning himself not as a rebel, but as a reformer of the institution his mother once hoped would soften with time. And then, at the very end of the document, in a note believed to be written in Harry's own hand, is a line now echoing through both courtrooms and palaces alike. This is not vengeance, this is repair. It is not a threat, but a resolution, a statement of intent, and perhaps a warning that if change does not come willingly, it may come forcefully through law, through exposure, through relentless truth. As the courtroom battle begins and the monarchy braces for the unimaginable, one question remains: how far will Harry go before the final curtain falls? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.